I could get rid of my wall phone.
You know what? I didn't get rid of my wall phone either.
She won't let me get rid of that wall phone. And no one ever calls it. And if they do, nobody answers it.
But I honestly think that you should take the show on the road one day. No, and you should come to the sheriff's office and see some of the history. You should come
I'm going
to the 911 center and see, when you think of Star Wars, how this place is operating. And I never ask what party you are. I don't concern myself. I never get into the back room or the weeds of politics. And every 4 years, if I'm not doing the people's work, and I'm not keeping the people of this county safe, and if I'm not working alongside other law enforcement to keep you safe, then you have the right to not pull a lever for me.
Well, welcome to Bear Wires, and I'm your host, Brian Heyman. This is our 8th episode that we're taping and videotaping, and we have a very special guest tonight, Lou Falco. We're going to go by Lou because that's what he likes, right? I have to confess that I've known Lou for a long, long time. Full disclosure, probably over 50 years, and I hate even saying that because it makes me feel like I'm an old man. But, we lived in the same area and probably, I would say, plus 50 years plus. Lou's going to tell us his story. He is now the sheriff of the county, top law enforcement guy that people go to for all different types of situations in Rockland County. And we're going to get into that, the sheriff's department in Rockland County. But we're going to talk first about Lou growing up in this area. We both grew up in the North Rockland area. We actually played sports together. And some of the things that he ran into as a child that started to shape him and finally guide him where he is today. So thank you for coming. I appreciate it, Lou.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for you inviting me.
So, we both grew up in the same area. I think you grew up in Stony Point, though, right?
Most certainly
and I
did.
was down in West Harrisshire, but it's all considered the North Rockland area. And I know that, we went to the same schools and, we did the same sports pretty much. You were a wrestler.
Yes.
I was a wrestler. We played football together for I don't know how many years. But it's a very sport-oriented area. It has been for a long, long time. I think a little less now than it used to be when we were there. But it was always a good area to grow up and develop as a child. You were pretty safe in the area. So what's changed when you were growing up in this particular area? What was the major changes that you saw happening around you? Like I said, we went to the major schools. We used to walk there. It was a safe area. But there was stuff starting to creep in even when we were kids now.
Yeah, like when we were young, to be honest with you, playing sports and doing things like that, I didn't anyway. I can only speak for me. I wasn't subjected to any drugs or anybody trying to sell drugs, or whether it was pot or cocaine or things at the time that were there in the 70s when we were,
right,
hitting high school. I guess we just ran in crowds that wasn't prevalent. We were playing sports. We were thinking about the next sport, and then we were thinking about what pickup games we were going to play when we weren't playing sports and we weren't in school, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it was stickball, whether it was tag, whatever it was, we were just constantly going.
Yeah, we weren't inside on any TVs or anything like that. You really didn't spend too much time inside at all. You'd leave in the morning, you'd come back at night. Just make sure you're home for dinner type situation.
That's right. My parents had that rule. You had to be home for dinner. But I rode my bikes. I can't tell you how far I've ridden my bikes when I was a kid. And when we I would call it north of the bridge.
Right.
Because I grew up south of the bridge. When we came up north of the bridge, we always stopped for water at the monument there, the spring there. And we would ride all over Stony Point, all over these roads that you're actually living on now. And did it all, hunted. Also, some of these properties here, and at the time, Letchworth was Letchworth as it was, and it was cornfields and stuff, and we had permission back then to hunt, and so we did it all. We trapped, we hunted, we played sports. There was never any downtime. There was always something to do, something to keep you occupied. And my parents, to be honest with you, I mean, they were, blue collar people. They both worked. So as long as you were home for dinner and you did your homework, or when you didn't, you got yelled at from the teacher and they took it home. But other than that, it was, I can't tell you, the best place in the world. I wouldn't change it for anything growing up in Stony Point or in North Rockland, and the people we met and the sports and even the education. Everybody says, "Oh, North Rockland." I think we got a very good education out of North Rockland.
Yeah, it was considered a pretty safe area. It was the north of the county. I mean, even today when I say that I'm living in Tompkins Cove, which was part of Stony Point, people go, in the county, they live in the county. The county's only it's the smallest county in New York. They still don't know, where's that? I'm like, what? You don't know where Tompkins Cove is? I've never heard of it. It's part of Stony Point. Then they'll go, oh, okay. I know where that is, But these were all the road I'm living on now. These were all considered back roads to me. Okay, you're going to go on the back roads. And I grew up with a little different crowd down in Sampsondale area, and where we had these different groups depending on what neighborhood you lived in, whether it was Village on the Green, Four Seasons, Sampsondale, that always seemed to have conflicts for no apparent reason, but they would constantly have them. And, like you said, in Stony Point, it was...
But that existed here, too.
Yeah.
Jones's Point. Not many people know where Jones's Point is.
Right. That's another
And my
spot.
father was a construction worker, and his people that he worked with lived in Jones's Point. So when I was a little kid, we went to Jones's Point, and there's a train trestle there, and we went swimming.
Right.
That's where we swam in the Hudson River under the train trestle.
Well, yeah, we did a lot of swimming and crabbing in the Hudson River when we kids.
Right,
I'm not sure I'd be crabbing anymore.
Off the Penny Bridge.
Yeah.
That's where we used to crab, off the Penny Bridge. So you had Jones's Point, you had Tompkins Cove, you had Grassy Point. Now, you just named 3 places. And those places, they used to call it the Cove Gang. There was the tough guys from Tompkins Cove. There was the tough guys from Jones's Point. There was the tough guys from Grassy Point. And Grassy Point is very historic, as you know, right? James Farley grew up there. The Brophy family started their first brick company out of Grassy Point. And so, it's rich in history.
Oh, absolutely.
The county is rich in history, but the town of Stony Point,
the battlefield, Stony Point battlefield.
Right,
I mean,
Lighthouse Court, all of that. So there's so much history here that, to be honest with you, growing up, we knew it. We took it for granted, though.
I know.
Riding our bikes past what's that sign? Today you stop and you read every historic sign.
There's one right up here on the top of the mountain.
But you know what? When you were a kid, you didn't care. You heard stories. You knew things. You'd go up to the battlefield. You'd go down. We had a boat. We'd go around, go swimming off of the battlefield. I mean, it was a great place to grow up.
It was, and it was safe, and things have changed a lot since then, but it's still relatively safe area, and it's a great. I brought my family up here. We never moved out of here, so it was something that has been good and continues to be good even now. Even 30, 40 years later, it's still a good place to bring up your kids. Now, there's a lot of things that happened in your childhood that you saw from outside looking at and making some decisions based on things that you ran into and ended up being there, whether you wanted to or not. Why don't you go into some of those things?
So growing up, this was a very, very rural town.
Right.
And in the 60s, which we grew up in, and then going into the 70s in our high school years, there was no Stony Point Police Department.
Right.
It was covered by the New York State Police. And they were very, very sparse on the amount of people and troopers, where Spoon River, I don't even know if it's there now, that was the troopers' barracks.
It's a real estate agency.
At the intersection of, 9W and 202.
210.
210. So that's where the right, and everything. There was no cell phones. You had to call ST6, whatever it was, which was Stony Point 6, which everybody today knows as 786.
Right.
But it was sparse. So there was a lot more businesses coming into the town of Stony Point. And there's things that people don't even know right across before you go down Lowland Hill. That was a Dairy Queen, and we would ride our bikes to Dairy Queen, Homestead Hardware,
Right.
And all of those things. And what happened was there were people coming up from the city and breaking windows and stuff. So the town of Stony Point in the 60s, like in 62 or 63, created a constable position in the town of Stony Point. And all of the old timers volunteered to be constables, and they would patrol on Friday night from 4 o'clock. In other words, they would share shifts
Right.
through 8 o'clock on Monday morning. And if they found something, they would have to call
So
the
they
state
didn't
police.
exist during the week.
They did not exist during the week. The state police
Right.
existed
Would monitor,
during the
right,
week.
right.
But their jobs, and my father happened to be a constable, their jobs was to go and shake all the doors where Homestead Hardware was, check all
Make
the
sure they
back
were
alleys,
locked.
make sure they were locked, make sure nobody broke in, make sure kids weren't doing stupid things. And they had an old blue Chevy station wagon that was assigned to them. And then in 1966, my father was working for Colonial Sand and Stone, and he was also doing side jobs as far as carpentry and masonry. They talked about forming the Stony Point Police Department. And X amount of them, including my father, were offered to go on to the first Stony Point Police Department.
Was the first Stony Point Police Department, was that there on East Main Street? Oh,
No, the first Stony Point Police Department
Right.
was in a room at Town Hall.
Okay.
One room. Then, after, in like 1968 or 69, they moved to that old firehouse building
Right.
on West Main Street.
Right, yeah.
And then
That's where I remember them then.
Right, and then probably in the early 80s is when they built the Stony Point Police Department. I'm glad they didn't build it till the 80s because there was bike trails there. And I don't know if you remember, but at the top of the hill where the Rainbow Deli was, that used to be Vance's.
Oh, yeah, right.
That was Vance's farm. And we used to go horseback riding there. And there's trails that go all the way down to the reservoir that we would ride our bikes and go fishing. They started at where the Stony Point Police Department is, down the hill, and they would come back up there. And then at the corner of Filer's Lane and Central Highway was a trampoline. And everybody would come up from the city for the day, going to the trampoline, then going to Vance's Farm and riding horses, and then they would go to Lowland Park. Lowland Park at the time, there was a dam there, and everybody got to swim at Lowland Park.
Wow. Yeah, that doesn't even exist.
Where the bridge is, if you come in 100 yards, there was a dam there.
Right.
The water would go over and flow out, of course, to the river, and there was an old bridge, but that was, and in our day camp, that's where I went to summer camp at the Stony Point Park all the time, and we got to swim and everything else there. That's where we swam.
So as you got older, there was a couple incidents that you encountered that kind of shaped, your opinion on alcohol and drugs and stuff like that. And why don't you go into some detail about that? Because I happen to know the person that you're going to talk about.
So when I was 16, when I was 15, all of a sudden people started drinking, and I was never a drinker, never partook, and we were playing sports,
Right.
And that really, to me, maybe guys on the team did on the weekends or whatever, but I never drank or anything, and my father actually grabbed me and all of the friends that we hung around with as kids, and he said, "Do you guys want to drink?" And my other friends said, "Yeah, we would love to drink." And he called all of their parents. We were 15 at the time. We were going to turn 16. He said, "Listen, I'd like to have them all over on a Friday night, and I'll buy them whatever they want. It's controlled. I'll be home, and they can drink." Well, everybody got as sick as a dog.
Well,
Okay.
that was a lesson learned.
That
I
was a
guess.
lesson learned, and I never drank after that. That's the truth. That was the beginning and the end
Wow.
for me.
Wow.
And then about 3 weeks later, we used to hang around with a guy by the name of Jeff Turbush, who grew up in Upper Stony Point on J Street, and he was older than us. And he would come down and we would play basketball. I had a basketball court on a telephone pole outside of my house on Getty Road in Stony Point, and we would all play basketball. And he used to like to drink.
He was a little older than us.
He was, he was 19 when we were 16.
Right, okay.
And so we would play basketball until like 9 o'clock at night on a weeknight. And this happened to be a Sunday night. We played basketball till 9. Everybody had to go in. And Jeff was leaving. He could drive. He could drive at night. And he went down to the end of the street. There was a party going on with older people that we all knew, but we'd never hung out with.
They wouldn't let us.
They wouldn't let us. And in the morning, on my way to school, we would walk down the street and we would go to everybody's house and when I say pick them up, get them, and we would walk to the bus stop, which was at Susan Drive and Filer's Lane.
Right.
That's where the bus picked us up. And so when we were going to pick up one of my friends, I saw Jeff's car in front of this house that there was a party at, and I saw his feet were up over the front seat, and his head was
from outside the car.
From outside the car.
Okay.
And I opened up the door of the car, and his head was down by the gas pedal, his feet were there, and there was vomit. But I didn't know to check him or anything. I didn't touch him. I didn't anything. I closed the door. Next door is where we were going to pick up a friend of ours, Steve McGilvray. His mother was a nurse. And I said, next door, I said, Jeff is sleeping in the car. It was kind of cold. It was probably October. Maybe you should check on him. We all got together. It was like 5 of us. And we walked and got the bus. By the time we got to school, after the first period, we were called down to the principal's office, and the Stony Point police were there. Jeff had passed away. He had choked on his own vomit from drinking pure wood alcohol.
Wow. Wow.
And so they were there to interview us. When did you see him last? The whole bit, And so, all of those things, and he was my friend. It was just, all of these things hit me, and I just always wanted to help, to be quite honest with you.
And that must have set the tone for you to keep away from alcohol. You saw the damage it was.
Well, between my father,
right,
doing what he did,
right,
and finding him,
right,
it was like I knew that only bad could come from it,
right.
And and then we could talk about later on that when I became a cop, I mean, the accidents I've seen and everything else.
We'll get into
all
that.
of that proved to be, very, very bad to be drinking, to be quite honest. Socially drinking is one thing, but to drink to an excessive...
Yeah, I don't think people realize the damage that alcohol has done in this country overall, because it's an accepted thing. And, I deal, as you might know, I deal with a lot of guys that are in recovery and stuff like that, and I try to help a lot of guys. I sit on a board called Rockland Recovery Homes. And, people are under the concept that, it's just drugs or opiates or, the alcohol really is an overriding factor with most of them. I mean, and it's very, very difficult to get off once they go by a certain point, and, like I said, we've had a guy on here, Corey Ray, and he'll, if you listen to that podcast, he went through hell with his family and everything. But he had told me that one of the toughest things to do was to stop drinking. It wasn't the drugs. And I deal with guys right now that have a very difficult time. It's accessible, it's accepted, but they can't handle it and they can't deal with it. But it's a habit like anything else. And because it's accepted and it's accessible, it has torn up a lot of families. I'm dealing with a guy in New Jersey right now. He's probably going to lose his wife, who wants to divorce him. He's filed for divorce, and a young kid because he can't seem to get out of the bottle. You know what I mean? So these things have ripped families apart for a long, long time. So you got early lessons, and those lessons provided, some, things that you said to yourself, okay, this is not good. I'm not seeing it, and nothing good happens out of this, so why would I do it? And you're lucky to do that. I grew up in a different atmosphere. I mean, we were crazy. I mean, you must know those guys down there. We were running crazy
with the Giaculis and all of that. Yeah, no, I mean, I know. I honestly know it all.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, even when we were getting to be seniors in high school, you could tell the people, the guys that we were playing sports with,
right,
that wanted to party, and they weren't the same athlete in 12th grade sometimes.
Absolutely.
That they were in 11th grade, and some were better, and some you can say, you know, they had all the potential in the world, and
right,
what are they doing? And then you come to find out later that they really started hitting the bottle or drinking or smoking marijuana or whatever else they were doing. And you said to yourself, wow, if I could have only been him prior to doing that, right?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I probably could have been a pro this. Yeah. I could have been a pro that.
I definitely could have went further. You know, a lot of guys that were very talented in high school, you know, we could go through a bunch of names, ended up being, I mean, they were superstars in high schools. The Roses, I can go through a bunch of them. And, you know, ended up having very difficult lives. You know, Kenny Rose committed suicide.
Yes.
You're aware of that. You know, he was a big star in high school.
Absolutely.
You know? And, you find that once they leave that environment, it's very difficult for them to get themselves acclimated to regular society. They were superstars. They would walk around. They were the kings, you know. And then they left high school, and it was, you know, you're just another fish in a pond, and it was very difficult for them, you know. But those things set you up for good habits. And your father, when you said, was a constable, is that why you started to lean towards?
Well, you know what? Seeing him like in his blue uniform and
right,
and everything else was one thing, and then when we would be out, like on a Sunday, maybe we were going to go to Lake Welsh. And we would get on the road to go to Lake Welsh, and he'd run across an accident. And we would sit on the side of the road because there was no cell phones.
Right.
Right? He would be helping the injured and everything. He'd tell somebody to go in the house and call the police. There was no 911. Right?
Right.
So they'd have to find that. So we'd be sitting there for an hour and a half, 2 hours. By the time we got back going, we really was no sense in going to Lake Welsh. So finally, they bought a pool for the backyard because we couldn't go to Lake Welsh. But to see helping people, I just saw my father as it was more rewarding to him than, you know, it didn't matter that we were sitting he was helping somebody.
Right, right. But before you actually what were you doing before you actually got involved with the sheriff's department? Were you doing?
No, so we graduated high school at 18, right, and I went to RCC. I went to Westchester Community College. I wrestled there. Then I transferred over to Rockland Community College to wrestle, and they did away with the wrestling program.
Is that the only sport that you played in college?
College is wrestling.
Yeah, so I played lacrosse in college. You wrestled, and we both played football together. Neither one of us played football. I have to be honest with you. When I was being recruited, I was actually with a guy that you know, Pete Hillebrand. Shout out to Pete Hillebrand.
Very well.
On a recruiting
what a lacrosse
trip.
Player, huh?
Yeah, excellent. And we were being recruited for both football and lacrosse. And I went to Brockport, and this guy like 6'4" comes out, like 280 pounds. And I looked at him, I go, imagine that guy hitting me. He'd kill me. So I said to myself, I don't want to play football anymore. So the next trip we went was to Geneseo, okay? And the first guys we met were lacrosse players. And I said to them, you know, we usually meet the football players first. He goes, we don't have football. I said, I knew the coach's name. I said, tell Coach Rose I'm coming here. Right? Because they wouldn't pressure me to play football, right? So I tell them I'm coming here. Then there was 6 girls, every one guy at the school. I said, definitely coming here. You know, so there was a lot of pressure when you went to these schools that they wanted you to play multiple sports. I'm sure they wanted you to do the same thing.
At the time, Westchester Community College had a football team.
Right, I remember.
And they wanted me to play football.
Right.
But I went there to wrestle.
Right.
And so by the time that happens, now I'm 19 years old.
Right.
And I say, you know what? I'm taking criminal justice. And one of the instructors said to me, you know, you go to the police academy, you get all the criminal justice in the world. Why are you taking criminal justice now? And it was just a thing to do if I wanted to go into that field.
Right.
And
but your father was the one that influenced you to go into that field. That was kind of what you saw?
Actually, no. They left me alone and said, like, find yourself.
Right.
I had younger brothers and sisters still behind me.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
A sister and two brothers. There was 4 of us all together.
All right.
So they were concentrating on continuing to raise their family.
Right.
They were happy I was going.
Are you the oldest?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And they were happy I was going to community college because they could afford that.
That's right.
And then it was called the CETA program.
I remember.
And so Jackie Quinn, a bunch of David Schassler, all of them.
All names.
Brian
Shout
Moore,
out to David.
Brian Moore, all of them signed up for the CETA program at the Stony Point Police Department. So I went for my interview there.
That was a federally funded program.
Funded, and it was only funded for 2 years.
Right.
You could only have it for 2 years. And so what happened was a couple of them got hired, and I was on a waiting list for that. And when I was there, Chief Skirty, who we went to school with, the daughter Linda. So I knew him because we went to school with Linda. And he said, listen, the sheriff's office has the same program. It'll be a little while before we can get to you. Maybe if you want to get started, you could go to the sheriff's office. So I went down, I filed the application and everything, and I got hired as a trainee dispatcher police officer.
Now, the sheriff's office, how long were the sheriffs actually in Rockland County?
So the sheriff's office was formed in 1798.
Wow.
So let's do some history. Rockland County was part of Orange County, if you don't know that. It was all one county.
No, I didn't know that.
And the county seat for Orange County was Tappan, New York. So the clerk's office, the county courthouse, everything was in Tappan, New York. And the people of Orange County were complaining and screaming that they had to go so far to the county seat to file their marriage certificates, to file their deeds, court, the whole bit. So finally, in 1798, the county split. And the reason this is called Rockland County, because the people in Orange were tired of going over the Rocky Mountain to the courthouse.
That they still do now to go back over 17.
Yes. So Rockland County was formed, and every county in the state by the Constitution has to have a sheriff. So
I didn't know that, really.
Every county. So the sheriff's office was first formed in 1798 when the county became a county.
Okay.
Fast forward from there, in 1966, on April 1st, 1966, the county board of supervisors, there was no county legislature, there was no county executive. The 5 towns were the oversight for the county finances and everything they did. And
they still do a lot of that, the 5 supervisors.
They do. And what happened was some of the police departments, most namely Clarkstown Police Department, were complaining because the county at the time was buying a lot of parkland, or they were being deeded or willed parkland from old families in Rockland County. And they were tired of checking it, the vandalisms and everything else.
Right.
So the police departments got together and went to the supervisors, whereby on April 1st, April Fool's Day 1966, the Rockland County Sheriff's Patrol was formed with 12 officers. Each town got to pick 2 officers from their town to appoint, and then the 5 supervisors got together and picked 2 people.
Wow.
So it was formed with 12 people. And the first police department, the first headquarters, was in the basement of the old jail and the basement of the old courthouse. And that's when it was formed. So there's, like I said, there's so much history.
Right.
Stony Point, I don't know if you know this, was North Haverstraw.
Yeah, I do know that.
There was a fight going on between the people of Tompkins Cove and the Haverstraw people. And so in 1765, they separated and became the town of Stony Point. So there were 4 towns up until 1765.
Wow.
And Again, 5 towns, 5 supervisors, and they ran it until the early 70s when they formed a Rockland County legislature.
Yeah,
and then in the 80s, they
Grant
formed
was
the
the
county,
first
county
exec-
executive.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
And the oldest town recorded in the state of New York is the town of Haverstraw.
Really?
From the 1600s.
Wow.
They were the first people recorded as the first town in the state of New
Organized
York.
town.
That's right.
Wow. I didn't know that. I got a little history lesson here that I didn't expect, but I appreciate it. I really
Well,
do.
I tell you what, I dig into history, and I know you're a big reader.
Yeah.
Okay? But, being the sheriff, I really wanted to know history.
Right.
Where we came from, different parts of the county. We cater to people differently in different parts of the county. We're a melting pot. And I wanted to know history so I could speak about it.
Right.
So I could de-escalate situations also, or invite people to go to places like the Stony Point Lighthouse and stuff,
Right.
to see the history and things like that.
So you decide to go to the sheriff's department, and what did you do there first?
So I first became a dispatcher, learned how to dispatch the police department, the police agency.
The patrol.
Patrol. And then the first summer came along, and they needed somebody on the Marine unit. So they swore
On the
me
Hudson
in.
River.
So they swore me in, and I worked the Hudson River the first summer with a gentleman who just recently passed away, a great guy, Clark Hill.
Okay.
And he went on to be a detective, and then he went to the district attorney's office. Then I got my first real taste of police work.
Right.
On the Marine unit. And then my CETA was running out the following year. I told you it was a 2-year
Right.
plan. And they liked me, and Sheriff Raymond Lindeman came to me and said, would you like to be a deputy sheriff working up in our civil division? And I said, I would love to. And at the time...
You were dispatcher at the time when he came to you. Okay.
And at the time, I was just studying for the police test that was coming out. So in January of 1980, I was hired as a deputy sheriff in the civil division, and I ended up scoring number 3 on the county test. And on December 3rd of 1980, I was hired as a full-time patrol officer.
How many patrol officers were there at the time?
At the time, there were 40.
Really? That big of an organization? Wow.
At the time, there were 40.
Yeah. So
No, I take it back. At the time, there were 34.
Okay.
Then Brinks happens.
Okay. So you were on the job when the Brinks happened.
I'm the only active police officer in Rockland County
That was on the
that
Brinks?
was working
Wow.
that day that it happened, worked on that case, and everybody else has since retired.
Now, the people that committed those crimes, are they alive still?
Yes.
So
Joanne Chesimard.
why don't you go into a little detail for people who don't know what the Brinks robbery was?
Okay, so the Brinks robbery was the Black Liberation Army and the Weather Underground, and they were rebelling against society and our
general.
government.
No.
And they stemmed from California right across to the East Coast. And they were getting more violent and more aggressive in the late 70s, beginning of the 80s. And they decided to come to Rockland County and rob a bank. And that would help fund their
What was the
movement
bank
and
they
their cause.
decided? What was the bank?
At the Palisades, at the Palisades Mall.
Right.
Was it a Chase? I don't remember if it was a Chase.
It was Rockland County banks. There was all kinds of banks back then.
So actually, it was on the upper level. On the one side was the Mario's hair place,
Right.
and the other side was the bank. And what happened was, as doing
That
this
was the
event-
Nanuet Mall.
Yes, I'm sorry, the Nanuet
Nanuet
Mall.
Mall.
So as we learn later on, they were doing construction in that hallway for the month coming up to there, and they were using the power nail guns and everything for the concrete. So when the gunshots went off, the people that were working, cutting hair and everything, they thought it was just part of
The construction.
where it turned out they ended up killing Peter Page.
Right.
At the mall there and things like that. And then when the bulletins went out, somebody, thank God, if you remember, and I'm sure you do, EJ Corvettes.
Yeah, I remember EJ.
So they drove from the Nanuet Mall to behind, they changed vehicles.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Behind EJ Corvettes. Then they went down 59 to get onto the Parkway. But somebody saw them changing vehicles and changing clothes. Again, no cell phones. But they went and made a call to the Clarkstown Police Department, who put out a bulletin. And then they were subsequently stopped by O'Grady, Brown, and Lennon, and Artie Keenan at the intersection of Mountain View and 59.
Right, where you get on the highway there.
Right.
Yeah.
And every year, I think this has been our 43rd year, every year we go on that date at 4 o'clock when they were killed on the 20th of October, and we have a full-blown ceremony.
Yeah, no,
And
I'm very familiar with that.
we
yeah.
recognize, and if you haven't been there, you should really
it is.
go to it once. It's very moving.
really moving, yeah.
And by the way, their family members still come and speak and thank everybody for constantly remembering, their loved ones.
Now, the people who perpetrated that crime, I believe one's dead and the other is still in jail.
Joanne Chesimard just died in Cuba.
Yeah.
We located her in Cuba like 15, 20 years ago,
Right.
and there's no extradition treaty.
Of course.
So they left her alone there. Judith Clark, Kathy Bodine were both pardoned by Governor Cuomo
Okay.
against a lot of objections
I remember
from
it
me
happening.
and many others.
Right.
And Donald Weems and the others, pretty much most of them died in jail.
Okay.
And Kathy Bodine, her son went on to be a scholar, and he went on to be the district attorney in San Francisco, California, and he was removed because he was letting everybody go.
Wow.
So there was a petition made, and they removed him from office.
Yeah, wow. See, you know what? People, it was such a long time ago. A lot of people who in Rockland County have no idea about, but that was a major event that happened in this county. It kind of was a point in the county where the sleepy bedroom county started to say to itself, okay, we have to start really protecting ourselves because, there's evil out there, and, we've been getting away with just going along our way, having and then all of a sudden somebody comes into the county for no apparent reason and decides to rob a bank.
It's probably one of the first recorded domestic terrorism events in our
country.
nation's history.
Yeah, right.
Okay?
And it happens in Little
terrorism.
Rockland County.
In Little Rockland County, the smallest county in the state of New York. Exactly right.
So you're in the sheriff's department. You're on the Marine Division. Now, where do you go from there?
I went to the Civil Division.
Okay.
And the Civil Division does evictions, property executions, income executions,
I'm familiar with that, yeah.
sheriff's sales, those things. And then, like I said,
How long were you doing that?
from January to December, when I was hired as a full-time patrol officer.
Wow. So you weren't doing that too long.
No, I wasn't doing that too
So
long.
you were doing the patrol. How many? You said there was about 35 to 40.
Right,
patrol.
and then when Brinks happened, we went up to 45.
Okay.
They gave us people because we had to move all of those Brinks prisoners. We were moving them all over the place.
Right.
Until finally they got a change of
Now,
venue to Orange County.
I was just going to ask, were they tried in Rockland County?
No, they were tried by David Ritter,
Right.
A county court judge in Orange County,
Okay.
because they put forth a change of venue.
Right.
But they were all found
Guilty.
prosecuted by Ken Gribbets, who did a fantastic job in that case.
Yeah, we can go into a lot of stories about Ken Gribbets, but
But I will tell you this: he was a very good prosecutor.
Yeah, he wrote a book, Murder Along the Way, and
part of that Murder Along the Way
I read it was
a case right here, Eagle Dag Vesti.
I know. I was living literally across the street from my brother was living across the street when that happened.
Actually,
go into a little detail there. I know the details there. I actually went down to the city I'm going to shout out David Shasta with him as he was part of the investigation from Stony Point. But go into a little bit of that case that happened right up here on the same road we're sitting on right now.
Right. So apparently there's a little tiny shelter at the end of the property.
Yes, there is.
Right.
Still there.
It's still there. And somebody went and found a skeletal remains, but they were having sex. I'm talking about homosexual sex. And they were wearing a black mask with a zipper. And they never took it off of the person when they shot him in the back of the head, in the neck. And it preserved his head. His whole head was preserved, but the rest of the body was skeletal remains.
Yep.
And the investigation ensued from there. And it was all part of a cult from New York City, as you well know.
Yep.
And what happened was, how they found it was the person that was part of it, that did it,
Lagaros, right,
kept calling the Stony Point Police Department. I have a feeling that, and did anybody ever check this area? And that's when they found the skeletal remains.
What was the other guy's name? Vesti, or what was the other guy in Long Island?
Eagle Dag Vesti.
Yeah.
And the bottom line there was, Lagaros hid the gun in the art gallery in a air conditioning duct. And he ended up giving it all up and getting that, but he could. They didn't convict Eagle Dag Vesti at the time.
I know,
and maybe never did, but
he ended up passing away.
Yes,
yeah.
But so murder along that mask, and that my predecessor, Sheriff Kralik, who was one of my mentors. He created a museum throughout the building. And we have that mask and all the findings from that case.
Right in the sheriff's department?
In the sheriff's office.
I didn't know.
And I have all the Brinks memorabilia. I have the windshield.
Next time I'm there, I have to go in and see
the windshield that was shot out, that Peter Page was shot with, and all the newspaper clippings. He turned it into a museum. I'm in the process of moving it to the new police academy because, again, like you said, all these new recruits and the cadets, they know nothing about the Brinks robbery. But you know what? There were police officers that died in Rockland County,
right,
and I want to show them that there's sacrifices to be had.
Right, right. And the book Murder Along the Way, just to go into a little more detail, it's strange how these things are related. We could talk about Gribbets and his situation down the city. But when I closed on this house, okay, I was sitting there, and I'm not going to name names, but my real estate agent at the time was totally intoxicated. We had to take him and sit him in the corner. Gribbets had a title company at the time when he came back.
After he came back.
When he came back from what he had done down the city, and they just got rid of their lawyer. So I'm sitting there and I'm going, what is going on here? And it was the most bizarre thing. We left that closing. Now we own the house. You would think we'd come up here. We were so stunned after leaving that because we had Gribbet, we had our real estate agent in the corner drunk. They couldn't even talk to him. We had Gribbets on one side, which, we knew the situation with him. And the lawyer that was representing the buyer is brand new, never had a conversation about the house at all because right before the closing, they got rid of him. And we were sitting there and go, you couldn't put this together if you wanted to. And we left that closing, Eileen and myself, we looked at each other, go, what just happened there? And we didn't come up to this house for like 24 hours. We just went back to where we were living in West Haverstraw, went to dinner, and we just said, let's just shake this closing off. And as soon as we do that, we'll go up to the house. And we did. The next day we came up here, and we've been here ever since. We're like 27 years now. But when you were moving up in the sheriff's department, there was a lot of things that were happening. It was growing massively. Just let's go over the different departments that you actually control as the sheriff of Rockland County. You're the top law enforcement person here. People don't understand how many different things you guys do and how many people are really under you that you control?
Okay, so we have 4 divisions.
Okay.
We have the police division, which is the sheriff's patrol that we spoke about. We have
And they're in charge of the whole county.
the whole county. We patrol the whole county, and we supply all the specialized services, and this is important to note, to all the police agencies in Rockland County. And why is that important to note? That's not a boastful statement. It's Sheriff Goldrick. You remember the name Tom Goldrick?
Yeah, I remember the name, but that was before.
That was before Kralik.
Okay.
It was Lindemann, Goldrick, Kralik, Falco.
Now, is Kralik still alive?
No, he passed away
How long ago? Not too long ago.
about 6 years ago.
Okay. I remember my brother knew him. He was a big Civil War buff. I mean, tremendously. And I'm a big Lincoln buff. You can see by some of the books here. So I always said to myself, I really should get together with him and sit down.
You're going to regret when I tell you about him in a second, about that. But he got together with the then sheriff. He was the chief of patrol.
Okay.
And he said, for us all to exist in Rockland County and for it to be financially sound for the taxpayer and no redundancy as far as duplication of services.
Right.
Redundancy in law enforcement is good, but duplication of services, people don't want to hear about it with their tax dollars. So we went more into specialization, bomb squad, arson investigation, processing crime scenes, fugitive investigations. We fly all over the country for people that abscond and jump bail from Rockland County, and we bring them back to Rockland County. We locate them, have them arrested, and bring them back.
So these were services that weren't necessarily in the local police departments, but you were kind of like an umbrella. So if they needed this specialized service, they could work with you.
Which they all do. And then the sheriff went on to get federal funding, and we created what they call the Rockland County REACT team, Regional Entry and Counterterrorism Team. And that was done after 9/11 because of terrorism. And we were afraid about schools and school shootings. So all the police agencies in Rockland County, except for Clarkstown, belong, and we all train together. We are accredited.
At the police academy here.
Right. And so everybody has people, every police department has people there. So we share that service.
Right.
And so therefore there's less burden on the taxpayer with overtime, training, equipment. And I still till today get grant funding to help support that, offset overtime and buy equipment. And so by sharing and also specializing, you have 8 police departments in Rockland County, 5 towns and 3 villages. When we were growing up, there were 5 towns and 6 villages.
Okay.
They since have condensed some of them. And the sheriff's office, which when I say umbrella agency, we have countywide jurisdiction, which every town and village only has jurisdiction within their town or village. And so therefore, we work well together along with the state police. So there's 10 law enforcement agencies in Rockland County that police this county. And I'm very proud to tell you in 2024, and the statistics aren't out for 25 yet, we were the 3rd safest county in the United States of America.
Wow. People would, why isn't that publicized? I mean, I didn't hear that. I don't see that.
We are the 3rd safest county designated
That's
in the
good to
United States. Not in the state, in the country.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, it's because of the collaborations between the sheriff, the state police, and the 8 police departments in Rockland County.
So something that I am very curious about as the head sheriff in the county, how did that get from, just quality or experience to become an elected position?
Every sheriff in the state of New York is elected except the county of Westchester and the county of...
Oh, they're appointed?
Yeah, county of Westchester and Nassau County.
Okay.
Everybody else, what happened was there was a sheriff's office in Westchester County, and he was elected. And then they decided to merge the sheriff's office with the Westchester County Police Department and form a Westchester County Police Department. And when they did that, the commissioner's title because the law says every county has to have a sheriff, is Commissioner/Sheriff of Westchester County. Nassau County decided that they have the Nassau County Police Department, and they didn't want a patrol. So they only do the jail and corrections, and they had a charter amendment done in the state where that sheriff is appointed also. So there's 2 appointed sheriffs, and the city of New York is appointed, but that's for 5 counties.
Now, who appoints them? The executive?
No, the mayor of the city of New York appoints.
Okay. No, about the
county executive appoints the sheriff, commissioner in Westchester, and the sheriff in Nassau.
How do you feel about it being an elected position? You know, it's strange to me. Politics is politics, but to have such an important position become a political football. It's strange to me to look at that. I know about supervisors and legislators. I get all that, but I never looked at a sheriff's position as a political position. All right.
So it's political that I'm elected. Okay.
Right.
And do I think it's good? I do think it's good, and let me just tell you why. And I'm the one that suffers the bumps and bruises.
Well, I would love to hear why.
Because every 4 years I get a report card. And every 4 years, if I'm not doing the people's work, and I'm not keeping the people of this county safe, and if I'm not working alongside other law enforcement to keep you safe, then you have the right to not pull a lever for me.
True.
But if I'm doing all of those things, right, then, and I ask you for your vote, then that's my report card every 4 years. Remember, when you become a police chief, when you're off probation, you can be police chief forever, until you decide to retire, unless you commit a crime. And sometimes new blood is good, okay?
I just don't see, the way politics are today, that, it's so divided that, sometimes not just because you're doing a good job may not be enough for you to stay in the job.
That's true. That's true. And today, not only in Rockland County, and maybe not as much in Rockland County, but nationwide, politics are polarized.
Right, absolutely.
Either you're to the far left,
right,
or you're the far right. But I'm going to tell you this: I've had a great career, and I stand on this every day. I went against Governor Cuomo when he did the bail reform, spoke out against him, took some shots from him, and
I remember
the Democratic Party because of it. I am a middle of the road, Jack Kennedy, common sense Democrat. But once I'm elected each time, that's my party of choice. There's no Democratic way or Republican way to be the sheriff. There's only one way, and that's to serve all the people and their needs.
Absolutely, but you have to be in that position to do that. So, in politics, as you know better than anybody, there are a lot of factions, and it's not always the best guy gets the job.
That's true.
Or, every time you have to.
Hasn't he been there too long? Isn't it time for somebody?
I'm sure
new?
You've been there. How long have you been the sheriff of Rockland County?
I'm starting my 15th year.
Okay, so don't you think there's a section out there that say, "Listen, how long is Lou going to do this?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, there is, and and I'm conscious of that.
Right.
But I'm going to just say this to you. I will know, I will know when it's time for me. And I say that based on the fact that I'm still being progressive.
Right.
I'm keeping up with technology. I am communicating with the elected officials in the county. I'm communicating with the police chiefs in the county. I don't live in a silo. Every citizen in this county, and there's many, that just call my office that I don't know, I either answer the phone or I return their phone call. I believe that they are my boss. See, I'm an independently elected official. The county executive cannot tell me what to do. The supervisors,
right,
even the legislature.
Maybe that is the reason that it's better to be elected. I've always thought as the top law enforcement person of the county that, politics gets very, very dirty. You've been able to stay above that fray, but it's still an election. You still have to go out, finance an election. You still have to win an election every time you
100%.
run again. Okay,
100%.
And how long is your term?
4 years.
Okay, 4 years. So you weren't affected by the new laws of changing,
Because I'm constitutional,
right?
the DA, the county clerk,
Right.
and the sheriff of every county are not affected by that change.
Okay, all right. So,
Okay? But the thing of it is in politics, local politics, Democrats tend to help Democrats and Republicans tend to help Republicans. Lou Falco, the sheriff of this county, I never ask what party you are. I don't concern myself. If a Republican legislator calls me and said, I need and I can do and it's within the law, I do it. I never get into the back room or the weeds of politics. If it's legal, I will do it.
yeah, I just thought it was strange when I look at this.
But I stop the politics at the door.
Right.
I don't want the officers, the men and women that work with me, to be affected by it. So the bumps and bruises, I take. I don't blame it on them. The decisions that are made are mine.
Right.
I take them and I stop them at the door so that the officers, the men and women, do not get affected by it.
Good. What I want to talk about is the massive group that you have at this county jail that's grown tremendously since we were young. How many officers do you have there?
I have 180 officers there, from command staff down to the line officer.
Right.
And they do an outstanding job. Listen, they're locked in 8 hours just like everybody else. They're not allowed to leave the property to go out for lunch or anything. They have to bring their lunch, or they can order in, takeout, but they have to stay there. They have a very tough job. And, just real quick, we were talking before about alcoholism, and I need to touch on this. And I'm touching on it because I study it. Okay, I really would like to help recidivism. And part of the issues is government doesn't help me with recidivism. And what do I mean by that? 67% of the incarcerated individuals in my jail, male, female, doesn't matter what nationality, have a drug, alcohol dependency or are self-medicating their mental illness with drugs and alcohol.
Right.
So when you think about that, 67%, and here's the issue. You get the best, and I'm not just saying this, the best treatment. You get better treatment than if you went to Nyack Hospital in the Rockland County Jail. You have social workers, you have psychiatrists, you have doctors, you have nurses. And what happens is when we recognize you have a mental illness, if you will, or a drug or alcohol dependency, we have those classes.
Well, let me ask you something. Because like I said before, I work with a lot of these guys, and sometimes they end up in the county jail. I go into the county jail. I'm an alcoholic. I go into county jail. There's no way for me to drink in the county jail. So I don't have that option, right? So, but you do have counseling in there.
We have counseling, and there's some drugs that you can be given to start weaning you, right? Yeah, but here's the deal. The day you come in, let's just say you have mental illness or drug or alcohol dependency.
Right.
You're this Brian today. When you leave me, the correction officers will say, he's a whole different person. And here's the deal. Once you go out the front doors,
it's over.
Why? Because they closed all the mental health institutions in the state of New York. There's no place for people to go. We give them, on our dime, Vivitrol and other stuff to get them out the door, to get them, hopefully, that 6 months got them started.
I'm going to tell you why it doesn't work.
Okay, you can, but here's the deal. I just told you I'm good with recidivism. 80% of them end up back in.
And I'm going to tell you why. Because this is a field that we both could discuss. Because I've worked with a lot of them, and I still work to this day. It's because the system is broken. The system stops. You've done your job. This is not only in the jail, this is also in Lexington, rehab places, all through this country. They've done the job. The addict has recovered. He's abstained. But there's no path forward. Okay? So what happens? They end up with the same people. They're all friends. the same habits. Unless you have a path to move forward. Rockland Recovery Homes, I'll give you an example. When somebody comes into that home, okay, they've been into rehab, they come into the home, they have to make a plan. We look at the plan, and it doesn't have to be written in stone, but there's the plan. If you do not have a plan, we have a problem, because we need to know where you're going to be in 3 months, 6 months. There is no follow-up. So once you basically say, hey, listen, we did our job, you're back out there. You've released them to the things that they were doing previously. And I've seen recidivism all the time in this situation. Maybe they don't end up in jail, but they end up in rehabs, or they end up at NIAC doing the 30 days there. I have a few guys in New Jersey, a couple guys up here. And it's very difficult if you don't have a plan or resources to go further. That's where this whole system breaks down. So maybe on purpose, maybe not. Not in the jail case, but certainly in rehabs, you see the same people going through all the time.
Well, in the jail too, but I'm going to tell you that correction officers will say, I really feel bad for Sally Fields. Once she got straightened out, when she was in here, and so I welcomed 2 former incarcerated individuals that were in for a long time. They started their own business called a Work Ready program for inmates. And I paid them out of funding that I got to do. It's a 10-week course, and you got to go to all 10 weeks.
Okay.
1 day a week for 10 weeks. And we bring in HR people so you can learn how to write a resume, how you can do an interview. We go through this all with them for 10 weeks, and then there's a graduation. They invite me to the graduation. It's always at night, and I go there and I speak to them and I congratulate them. But I tell them all this. Just because you're in this facility doesn't mean you're a bad person. You might have done a bad thing. That's why you're here. Yeah. And I could care if all these cells were empty. If you go back out into society and you're productive for yourself and your family. And the people that you're hurting most is not only yourself, but it's your family.
Yeah, it's the people around you. You know what I mean? It's something that I've seen over and over again. It's something that really bothers me, because it seems like the care stops. Okay, they're sober, then the care stops. But the care really needs to carry on. They need to have outlets. They need to have a schedule. They need to have a purpose for them to stay sober. Okay, and what happens is they don't have that. They don't have the skill sets. They don't have the ambition. They don't have the guidance to do that. So they end up doing it again, and you see those same people come back to you. And like you said, they're not bad people. They're doing bad things. So it's something that, I've been involved with this for about 7 years now, sitting on the board of Rockland Recovery Homes, and I've gotten a bird's eye view of what the system really is. And I'm not familiar with the jail system, but I am familiar with the recovery systems, and that's where they fall down. So we try to do something a little different.
But we need other. So in other words, you got Narcotics Anonymous, you have Alcohol Anonymous. That's all well and good, but if you have mental illness,
absolutely,
you need to have some place to go to get the proper continue.
Right.
I told you we get them stabilized.
Right.
To continue to get those medications, or be able to speak to a social worker, or when they're depressed, speak to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They closed all the mental health facilities, right? Then they closed Good Sam. Now it's open at NIAC. Right. They only have so many beds.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a revolving door, and it's not fair to society, because everybody has children that it happens to. It might not be them, their wife, their brothers and sisters, but somebody. We got to get them help, and we got to keep them in a place where they stay stable. We're talking about alcoholism. I have probably 15 friends that I made over the years, none of them from high school, that when they come up with a celebration date, I've been 15 years sober, they'll call me, can we go to breakfast? I just want to tell you, today is my day. I'm 15 years sober. I'm 20 years sober. And I never say no to them.
Right.
Because, I represent the law. And for some reason, they want to tell me this, and they want to open up, and they want to be able to say, you know what, look at me. And I always tell them, I'm proud of you. You got to keep doing the same thing. Because for that disease, or those diseases, right, drugs or alcohol, it's easy to fall.
Absolutely. But
To
if
that
you
temptation.
have a purpose and a plan, you can stay out of that. But that's where the system falls off. When you're losing 70 to 100,000 people a year in this country to alcohol and drugs, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to put their finger on the dike, and that's done through Suboxone, and it's done through other opiates. Just to listen, if they take that, they won't die, but will they get better? Probably not. And where it breaks down is, okay, they are better, but they have no purpose. So they're eventually going to go back and do what they've been doing before. So it takes a big investment. But if you look at the investment that you would make, it would be a lot less than you're spending incarcerating them or helping them in rehabs and paying Medicare to pay those things. But nobody's done the math. It's a big business. Recovery is a huge business in this country, and I'm not sure they're revolving the same people around.
Well, you're talking about big business. Let's go to the drug companies, right? Oxycodone.
Right. Well, the family there.
Right? And at one point, oxycodone, I could sit up and do a lecture on oxycodone. I could do that for a whole day here, okay? $90 a pill on the street of the county of Rockland. And Skittles parties, do you know what those are, right?
No.
So if you ever hear your grandkids, God forbid or whatever, there's going to be a Skittles party.
Oh, Skittles. I thought you said Skills.
No, Skittles.
Yeah.
You know what they are, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has to bring 2 pills to the party, and then you just take them, which you could be taking your grandfather's heart medication and develop heart problems.
Right.
Also, drug couples going out and doing house shopping on the weekends. That's why I have a thing called Operation Medicine Cabinet, because they go, can I go to the bathroom? And they go in the medicine cabinet.
Wow.
People don't lock them up. And I go and I talk to seniors and I say, I want everybody to raise their hand here on how many people count their pills after they take them. Nobody raises their hands.
Right.
I said, and where do you put them? In the medicine cabinet. Where do your grandkids go to the bathroom? Where does the babysitter go to the bathroom? You should be locking that stuff up. This is how they get easier access to it.
Do you think that's a major problem when you, or is it really the drugs that are coming in from out of this country?
Well, Mexico is really hurting us big time.
Okay.
With the drugs coming from, but the pharmaceutical companies,
they're not doing any better.
They're not doing any better.
But now with the fentanyl coming in, people don't even know what they're taking, and sometimes they don't even have an opportunity to go to rehab. They end up dead. So that's scaring a lot of people, and that situation is an epidemic in this country that shouldn't be coming in. But let's talk about how many people do you have under you in total? The jail, the patrol?
So I have 475 employees.
Wow.
And $100 million
big operation. Budget. What's the budget you said?
$100 million.
Wow. So that's a big job.
80% of that is salaries and benefits.
I'm sure.
Is salaries and benefits, and the rest of is equipment that we need, to keep the people safe.
It's a big job. There's one more topic I want to talk to you about, and it's about gun control. I own a number of guns, handguns, rifles, and we've talked about this before, but the idea of these guns that are, being used in crimes, all my guns, and everybody who has guns in New York, when you buy a gun, it gets registered. Everybody knows what the numbers are. Matter of fact, you have to turn in your license. They have to put it on your license. My license has all my handguns. I'm not talking about long guns. I'm talking about handguns. But yet we have a problem with all these, and I'm not talking about the ones that you can make, but I'm talking about regular handguns. We have a problem with these guns showing up in crimes. So I have a lot of trouble understanding how that happens. How do these people get a hold of these guns? If I have 38 and it's gone, I go into my safe and my 38's gone, I should have the obligation to call the police and say, listen, here's the serial number on the gun. The gun was stolen from my house. So if it ends up in a crime, I didn't give them the gun, it seems to me that you'd be able to solve a lot of, crime by being able to track these guns back to where they originate. Now, tell me why, with so much documentation with guns, you literally have to turn in you literally can't get that gun until you go back to them and turn your license to them and say, listen, it's on my license.
Short of the homemade guns.
Right.
Short of that. These guns are all coming out of states that don't have regulations on guns. Yep. Number one. Number two, when they are, state of Florida, Texas, other states.
So those don't have
Kentucky.
to be registered when you buy a gun?
No, they are. Listen, they are. The serial numbers are registered with the ATF.
Right. I go in, I buy a gun in Florida. There's a serial number on every single gun. That's attached to my name when I buy that gun.
Right, and then it's stolen.
No, okay, so my job...
No, and then it's stolen.
Okay.
And it ends up in New York City.
It's stolen. It should be my obligation as a gun owner to notify the police.
No, they do. They do. So what? You notified us that the gun you bought, you were a Florida resident.
So all these guns are showing up stolen.
Stolen. Yes.
So they're just buying guns and saying that these guns were stolen. So after a certain amount of guns being stolen for any individual, there should be a law out there.
You're saying any individual. Down in Florida, they're breaking into gun stores.
That's different.
Yeah, but okay, but so those guns, we have all of those serial numbers too.
They all left the store. Okay, so those guns
were stolen.
Right.
But people every day are not locking their guns up.
Okay.
In these states,
so it's an individual responsibility.
These states that it's the right to bear arms with no recourse or anything. They're leaving them in their car. They're not putting them in lock boxes. There's no regulations.
Well, there should be a penalty for that.
Okay, so we live in the state of New York,
right.
And you described it very well, that you can't do anything until everything is registered, this, that, and the other. And you're told when you go through the 3-hour course that you should get a safe, right? You should always keep the bullets separate from the gun, and you should put a lock on the gun anyway, and so on and so forth. The guns are not coming, for the most part, from the state of New York. They're coming from other states into the state of New York.
But there's still an individual has to buy that gun.
That's fine.
Okay, and it's attached to a serial number. So if that gun ends up in a crime, it's in New York, it's in the Bronx, they have a robbery.
But they do.
Somebody gets shot, the gun's there.
But they do go and report it to their local police department in Florida, in Kentucky, in Virginia, and then it ends up on the streets of New York.
Yeah, but we're not talking about one or two guns.
No, we're not.
So how many guns can get lost by one individual?
Oh, it's not one individual. It's also people. It's also people.
So explain that.
Staking out people going into the gun store in these states with the right to bear arms. Then they follow you home. Then they do a burglary.
You mean they're doing all that? That's how these guns are getting here?
That's correct. That's a large portion of them.
It seems to me to be a very complicated way to get this many guns, into New York State illegally.
But again, let me just tell you how fine.
I'm trying to figure out why you can't have a massive computer database that has every owner of every gun attached to a serial number.
There is.
I find this gun in a crime. What do? I go back to the owner. I say, "Did you report this gun gone?"
What happens is, if we find a gun, let's just say
this is really difficult for me.
No, but if you lived in Florida and your gun was stolen, so we know that you bought
my gun's stolen. It's not there. The first thing I have an obligation to do is go tell the police
department. Okay,
my gun was stolen. Now, one gun. My 38 was stolen.
Okay.
It's not, I don't know what happened to it.
Okay, gun stolen. It ends up in a crime in New York City. Right. First thing we do, or in Rockland County, let's use us.
Okay.
First thing we do is we run the serial number through the ATF.
Right.
And they say, Brian Heyman bought that gun on this date from this gun store in Holiday, Florida. I'll make up you lived in Holiday, Florida. Okay. And it was reported stolen on this date to the Hollywood Police Department. We then contact the Hollywood Police Department. They send us up their report. Brian had his house burglarized and this gun was stolen. Okay, so Brian's off the hook, but we still have this gun. And this is happening all over the country. But the other thing you should know is every single time we have a shots fired, and we have a lot of it going on in certain villages in this county, those bullets are then picked up, the casings and the bullets that are retrieved from buildings and stuff, and we put it into a system. So we're tracking the same gun used in, you ready? City of Newburgh, Troy, New York, Village of Haverstraw, Bronx.
Wow.
Same gun. Wow. They're passing the guns around, the gun around, part of that gang. So we're tracking the bullets, the gun, and then we have to develop suspects and stuff like that. So it's a lot easier than you think to get that illegal gun.
Okay. All right. Because I always, because there's so much paperwork involved in getting a gun, I just couldn't understand, how these people that you can't trace this back to someone.
Everything is being traced. Everything's being traced. But legitimately, you had your gun stolen.
Right.
There's a police report.
But how many times does that happen?
It's happening every day.
That many guns?
Every day. In the country. Every day.
Wow. Wow. So I wanted to get through that because I asked you that question once before. Now I'm more satisfied with the answer that you gave me this time. But because it affects, good gun owners. You know what I mean? These guns, there's such a push against it. Just lately it's opened up. Where New York State is, it's a carry state now, and. And more people.
But everybody needs to be responsible.
Right.
That's the key to being a gun owner. Responsibility.
Absolutely.
So
there should be some kind of penalty if you're not.
Yeah, but you're saying that if I break in your house right now and break in your safe,
right?
Why should you be penalized?
No. If I'm not saying you should be penalized then. What I am saying is that you should be reporting that immediately. Okay.
And they do.
Okay.
And they do. And they do.
So when they find those guns used in a crime, they could say, okay, we know where the gun came from. But I'm not sure that's happening all the time. Are you able to trace all these guns when you find them?
Every single gun is traced.
Okay.
Because every gun, it's manufactured, not homemade, has a serial number, and it has to be registered. There's two things that happen with a brand new gun today for the last 5 years. The gun is test fired, so we have the bullet casing and where the firing pin struck the primer.
Right.
And we have the bullet itself for the lands and the grooves in the barrel.
For the barrel.
That goes with the gun. When it's sold, that has to be sent to the state police and the ATF. So now it's registered in this system that when we find these bullets, we can tell what gun it came from.
Okay.
Even if we don't have the gun.
Wow. Wow. Well, let's say you do that. You find the bullets. You match up the bullets. It's a legitimate owner. The next step is you go to that owner and say,
Right.
where's your 38?
And it has happened where we went and he'll say it's in the safe, and he'll go to the safe and it's not there.
Wow.
But then you find out that one of his children has a drug problem.
Okay.
And took the gun and sold it.
All right.
Right? So that's the converse to it. But most people, when they're stolen and they find it, they report it.
Okay. So most
Because they
people
want to be out from underneath.
right, any kind of liability.
Not only the liability, if that gun was used to kill somebody, they want to have a clear conscience with it.
So you're saying the majority of the time, if a gun turns up missing in someone's house, they report it directly to the police.
Yes.
Okay. And that's basically what everybody should do. So
absolutely.
if that gun is used in a crime or anywhere else, there is a liability plus the moral obligation for them to say, listen, I didn't have control over that gun at the time. It's one of these things that is a controversy in New York State and has been for a long time and throughout the country. So there's other states in the country that really don't take it that seriously. Everybody's carrying a gun. I mean, and when I lived in Texas, everybody was taking out their gun as we went into the bar, literally taking out their gun and putting it down because they wouldn't let them go into the bars with the gun because they
were also carrying it on their hip exposed sometimes, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I do own guns, and I'm always saying to myself, okay, if one of my guns, was stolen or disappeared, the first thing I would do is go to police. And so if there was a crime committed with that gun, that I would be absolved of, not using that gun. And I thought that's what everybody should do. And I just thought it might be easy to track back to where that gun came from.
Again, we always can go back to where it came from or where it was sold from.
Okay.
Always. For instance, if they broke into a gun store and so they purchased it, that's where it was sold. They didn't sell it to somebody yet.
Right. Got it. Right. I've always tried to figure out why it wasn't like a database that could say, but you do have a database, and
two databases, right? One with the serial numbers, and then the other one does the bullet casings and the bullet itself.
Well, I'm really glad you came to do the podcast. You are one of the most well-liked sheriffs in a long time, and that's why you keep getting elected, and you stay on top of things. And I hope you decide to stay a lot longer. Rockland County needs you. So
that's my plan, as long as the people will have me.
Oh, they'll have you for a while, for sure. You got a big job there. We went over it. I think people will understand how big a job it is with all those people and all those moving parts. But I have to tell you do a great job, and it's a pleasure to see you guys around the county supporting all the police departments, and you're just about everywhere. So, and I know the jail's no easy task either. Plus, you take prisoners back and forth to court. There's a lot of moving parts there.
And plus, we control the 911 center.
Right. Which is my nephew actually worked there for a few years. So, which is a very difficult job.
And I'm just going to say to you, they are in my opinion, they are the unsung heroes in the law enforcement. When you call and you're in a panic, regardless what it is, you fell on the driveway or somebody just broke in your house, this person is the person that has to calm you down, get as much information as possible. And then either the firefighter, the police officer, the ambulance worker, they get all the credit for responding there, right? And helping. But the person that really was the catalyst to it,
front line,
is the person on the other side of that phone that when you needed help, they helped you through.
Is it tough to get people to work there, 911?
It is tough to get people to work there.
Very stressful.
Stressful, and the amount of training is second to none.
It's all at the fire training center?
Yes. And listen, you're doing this podcast, and thank you for it. But I honestly think that you should take the show on the road one day. No, and you should come to the sheriff's office and see some of the history. You should come to the 911 center and see, when you think of Star Wars, how this place is operating. And remember, we're answering the police calls, the fire calls, and all the EMS calls.
One question. With the 911 center, I just want to ask you this question because it's, we all had these phones that were on the walls. Okay, so you were able to track where that call was coming from, whether you got that number or not. You were able to do it. These days, a lot of people are getting rid of their phones. I happen to keep mine because my wife will not let me get rid of it because of 911. She goes, "What happens if something happens?" And they won't know how to find us. How is that affecting your ability to track back where these calls are actually coming from?
No, because your cell phone, we ping it off of a tower.
Okay, so I could get rid of my wall phone.
You know what? I didn't get rid of my wall phone either.
She won't let me get rid of that wall phone. And no one ever calls it. And if they do, nobody answers it.
It's $22 a month.
Is that what it is? I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, I have not Verizon. I have Optimum.
That's what I have too.
It's $22 a month for your thing.
She won't.
I've had the phone number for like 35 or 40 years.
Yeah.
And we didn't get rid of it.
Well,
whether it comes from your house phone or your cell phone, you're broken down on the side of the road, and you could be. How many people don't know Buckberg Mountain?
Right.
If you didn't grow up here or you don't live here, you're not just visiting one time and knowing where you're going.
Absolutely.
You say I'm broken down with a flat tire, we can find you.
Good. But I'm going to keep my phone anyway because I need to keep the peace. That's why. But I really want to thank you. You're a longtime friend. I really appreciate you.